So one of the features that I do, and I'm going to get to super chats here at the end of the show. So when I wrap this part up, I will get to super chats. So and there's several of them in there, and I thank y'all for that. But I'll get to those at the end of this segment. There's something I like to do before games where it's kind of a what to look for. And it's a little bit different than like keys to victory. It's different than, matchups. It's more about how they're playing and how they're going about their business to say, okay, they're locked in, they're ready to go. They've done the preparation, they're mentally where they need to be, they're culturally where they need to be, they're fundamentally where they need to be. And it's usually something you can see in the first quarter to quarter and a half into halftime. That's going to tell me, okay, this team has made the changes, right? And so I'm going to talk about the offense, and then I'm going to dive into the defense, and then we'll get into the super chats after that. But it's one of those things where like when I talk about the Louisville game last year, but you could just tell going through pregame that there was just something that was not right. I remember talking to a former NFL player that was at the Michigan game in 2019. He was down on the field, and he and I were talking about 10 minutes before kickoff, and he was like, dude, they're not ready. Like, I don't know what's going on, but Michigan's kids are jumping all around. Every time it starts raining harder, they're jumping up and down. They're fired up. The Notre Dame kids are putting parkers on. They don't want any part of this action. They don't want to be here. And what happened? Notre Dame goes out and gets steamrolled. And then there's other games where I'm like, dude, they're locked in. They're focused. They're ready to go. Like, I knew they were going to give Georgia a battle. Just watching them in pregame, just watching the old linemen go against each other and watching the receivers come off. I mean, there was a purpose to what they were doing. And then you can kind of watch when they come out early in the game. It's like Michigan in 2018 is another example where, look, you come out early in that game and it's just, oh, man, they are ready to go. I mean, they jumped all over Michigan. And then there's other games where it's just like you get a bunch of false starts. Like the Duke game I wasn't at the Duke game last year because we had I think I got sick, really sick before that game, and I had to cancel my flight. But I remember watching just early in the game, and I'm thinking, like, they hit a couple big plays. You had that seam route. You had that post-snap switch seam route to Mitchell Evans for a big gain, and then you got stalled, and Jeremiah Love had to do a fake punt, and you ended up scoring. But there just was, like, early on, you could see the O-line wasn't getting a push. You had, like, false starts on your fifth-year senior center. Got, like, 2 false starts in the first half, and you're just like, this team's not locked in. This team is not locked in and ready to go. And that's kind of those are the things that I'm talking about. Those are the things that you look at and say, okay, this team is not locked in or this team is locked in. And anyone that's ever coached the game knows that you got to get a sense early of, okay, like this is where we're at, because you have to coach around that. You have to coach, hey, dude, we are fired up, so let's just turn it on. You know what I mean? Or, hey, we're in a funk right now. I got to figure out how to get us out of this funk. So you're looking for that as a coach. It's definitely something you need to be aware of. Like, hey, pregame, we were just going through the motions. We had like 10 drop balls. You got guys doing bad run fits and half speed drills, things like that. Like, we're not locked in. And now it's your job as a position coach, coordinator, and then head coach to recognize that and do your best to get it to adjust it. And that's what this all comes down to. So let's jump into the offense and let's talk about what I'm looking for early from the Notre Dame offense. And this is going to be about A&M and then also about looking at it from the standpoint of sort of the season, to be honest with you. And the first thing to me, and this is more specific to A&M first, but also is going to tell us a little bit, is I don't really care in the first quarter that the offensive line is necessarily playing well, or maybe give up an early pressure, give up an early run through. You're not necessarily everybody on the same page. That's obviously important, but that's not even really what I'm looking at. What I'm more looking at is how they're playing. That is going to be so much more important to me, because as the game goes on and they get into the speed of the game and the flow of the game, they'll clean up some of that stuff. That's just natural. But if you come out early and you're not playing with physicality and force, and you're catching and you're not moving your feet and you're not using your hands, and you're just playing a little bit timidly, that's harder to turn that switch on, right? And when we watched them play Duke and Louisville last year, you could see it in the line that these guys are not ready to play. As a unit, they were not ready to play. And it's false starts a part of it. You're affected by the crowd noise, but it was really just about, early in that game, I think second series, fifth-year senior center, right? All those career starts, comes off the line and just gets driven into the quarterback, put on his back, and then the quarterback gets drilled. Right? That's not about, okay, crowd noise or anything, inexperience. That's just about, I got my butt kicked. And there's way too much of that. So that's one of my big fears about Joe Rudolph. I don't love the way his team prepares in the very limited access we've seen. In drills, there was not as much intentionality towards playing really with your hair on fire. And that doesn't mean it's not happening. Because like I said, we saw maybe 2% of the entire fall camp with the little access we got, maybe 2%. So it's just a concern that I have. And I was talking to my dad about this the other day. And listen, when you're young, you're going to get snap counts wrong. When you're young, you're going to hold. When you're young, you're going to give up a run through. When you're young, you're not going to get quite out of your stance fast enough, and Nick Scourton's going to beat you. Those things are going to happen. I'm okay with that. And you live with that to a degree as long as it's not really, really bad moments and bad losses. You know what experience shouldn't have any impact on? Toughness, a desire to play physical football, a willingness to fight. Those things should not be impacted by I'm young. Okay, so it's like, look, yeah, you're young, but come off hard, play hard, hit somebody, go for it. That's where it needs to be. Like, get after it. That should travel, right? Like, crowd noise can affect a lot of things. It shouldn't affect that. It shouldn't affect whether you're willing to fight. Shouldn't affect whether you're willing to play hard, whether you're willing to drive your feet, whether you're willing to use your hands with violence. That's going to tell us a lot about this game. Are they playing aggressive football up front? Are they playing physical football up front? If they're not, it's going to be a long day. If they are and A&M's winning some battles, I'm going to be okay. Like, look, just patience. They're going to get a couple things corrected, but they're playing hard. And that's going to settle in, and they're going to make some plays, right? You guys, prepare yourselves for this. Notre Dame's offensive line, even if Joe Walt and Blake Fisher were coming back, is going to have plays where they get beat by Texas A&M's defensive line. It's going to happen. First time it happens, I don't want to see you in the chat like, oh my God, this is just terrible. Okay, if it keeps happening, then obviously that's a problem. It's going to happen. I don't care who they play. They could put every fifth-year senior that they have on the roster on the field, and A&M's D-line is going to make some plays. That I can live with early. You can get that stuff corrected. But I need to see the intensity. I need to see the fire. I need to see the force, because one of the things that we were told, and somebody says, is Aggie D-line that good? Yeah, every D. I mean, I don't care. Look at how good Notre Dame's offensive line was last year against Ohio State. Played great. You had first-round pick, second-round pick. Ohio State's guys still made plays. That's going to happen. Go look at Alabama in 2012. As good as Alabama's offensive line was, Stephon Tuitt, Lewis Nix, Caperon, Lewis Moore, they still made some plays, right? They didn't get dominated the whole game. They still made some plays. They're going to make plays. That's football. You could win this game by 40, and they're still going to have 4 tackles for loss and a sack. That's part of football. But you've got to play with force. You've got to play with physicality. You got to move your feet and got to use your hands. That's what I need to see early. And if we're seeing that, I'll be okay with some of the mistakes early. That'll get cleaned up. If they're getting driven back, if we're seeing what we saw in the Duke game, where a guard comes off and he gets driven into the quarterback, the center gets driven into the quarterback, or the tackle gets thrown into the quarterback because he's catching and not playing physical, that'll be more concerning. And that could also then have long-term concerns, because it means that Joe Rudolph didn't do what he needed to do to fix that from last season. And that will be a big concern for me. Number 2, and this is more stylistically, I want to see that early on, Notre Dame's offense is setting the tone for this game. Here's why this matters: short-term and big picture. Short-term, I want to see them come out, push the tempo, and attack the A&M defense. There's practical reasons for this. Number 1, the more aggressive you are, there's an aspect to where you're actually, and you're pushing the tempo, you're actually taking steps to somewhat negate the other team's advantage when it comes to line play. Because we're going to use tempo, looking at it from the coaching standpoint, we're going to use tempo, we're going to use motion, we're going to use shifts, we're going to move the pocket, we're going to take some shots down the field, we're going to do some things to soften them up. We want to get them on their heels. The second part of that is, while the D-line has a lot coming back that's returners, and there's some new guys, but there's a lot of new on the back end of the defense. Tyreek Chappell's back, but I don't know that he's necessarily going to be playing the same position. Bryce Anderson's back. He's playing somewhat of a unique position. There's several guys that were on the team last year. Javen Thomas, who I believe is going to – I think he's the one I think that's missing the first half because he was kicked out for targeting at the end of the bowl game last year, which I think is just stupid. I do not think those type of things should carry over to the next season. That's ridiculous, but whatever. It is what it is. But there's a lot of new faces in that secondary, and there's a lot of new faces at linebacker. The more you attack them, the more you go on push the tempo, the less you let them communicate pre-snap, the more likely they are to make mistakes. And the best way to protect your offensive line is to find ways to force them into make mistakes. We're all worried about Notre Dame's offensive line making mistakes for good reason. How about trying to make some of those A&M players make mistakes as they're learning a new defense? That's going to be a big part of it. And that's something that Notre Dame is going to have to find a way to create it early. If you come out of that game and out of the game or out of the break and you start that game kind of passively, you're kind of feeling it out, you're not being super aggressive, that's going to be a big concern for me. Big concern for me. And it's I don't know who I'm going to be most concerned about, but I remember the 2017 season. Notre Dame goes into that Temple game. You got this great O-line. You're going to run the ball down people's throats all year. What'd they do first play of the game? They play action pass and threw a deep ball to Equanimous St. Brown. And that's what they did. I want to see some aggressiveness. What'd they do against Michigan early? They're throwing bombs to Miles Boykin. They're throwing bombs to Alize Mack. They're throwing bombs to Chris Fink. They had Michigan on their heels early. What allowed Michigan to get back in that game? Once they got a lead, BK'd it, and they got passive. They went away from what was working, and they let Michigan get back in that game. Right? Same thing against Florida State in 2021 when they went on the road to play Florida State. Notre Dame was aggressive early. 4th and 1, they take a shot down the field, big play, Michael Mayer, touchdown. They get a lead, BK'd it, and they let them come back. Right? Took their foot off the gas. I want to see that this team comes out tomorrow and pushes the tempo, because if they don't, that tells me that there's not a lot of confidence in this team, one, or it's going to tell me that Coach Freeman still has his hand on the scale of the offense holding things back. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's something that I want to see. That doesn't, and when I mean aggressive, that does not mean and attack the defense. That does not mean coming out and throwing bombs. That's what worked against Michigan, because Michigan was doing a lot of man coverage on the outside. You had 2 6'4" receivers. That's just what made sense that game. I'm not even saying coming out throwing a bunch of bombs early. What I'm saying is attack them for width, attack them vertically, attack them with layers. Be willing to go at them aggressively. It's aggressive. Aggressive doesn't always mean bombs, but you guys will see it. You'll know it. Like, okay, they completed a ball. They're going with some purpose. Hey, get lined up. Let's go. We know the call. Your coach is telling you what to do. You get everybody lined up. Let's get up there, snap, and go. Don't let their D-line pin their heels in. Anyone that's played D-line knows this. Is a slower team, I can get up there. I can get in my stance. I can get my hand in the ground. I can get in sort of my good takeoff stance, and I can come. But if you're in a situation where they're going tempo and I barely get my hand on the ground, it's hard for me to then convert to force vertically, right? It's just not – it's going to be a lot harder for that. So I want to see that tempo early, get A&M on their heels. That's going to tell me that this is a confident Notre Dame football team that's ready to go on the attack. Number 2, this is going to be a big thing for this game, is how comfortable does Riley Leonard look? Right? Like, he's obviously taken all the reps. It was funny. Somebody asked Coach Freeman if he was ready to name Riley Leonard the starting quarterback. And his response, you kind of looked at him and he was like, well, he's taking all the reps with the ones, right? And so he's got a ton of reps with the ones in fall camp, but he didn't get any in the spring. He didn't play in the blue gold game. And this is the first real live action that we've seen him play. And it's a defense, and he doesn't always know what they're doing. It's not the same defense he's played for the last month. How comfortable does he look running the offense, getting guys lined up, making sure, and this isn't even just about executing throws, making sure they're not getting any, false starts because he's properly communicated snap counts, making sure that there's no silly penalties like they complete a ball down the field and it comes back because your receiver was covering up the tight end. You as a quarterback need to see that, right? Making sure that the receivers are going in motion at the proper time and the ball's being snapped at the proper time. That's all part of the quarterback's job. And early on, when you're new and you're getting used to things, you may not see all of those things. And then, of course, you get into the post-snap reads. Is he making quick decisions? Is he getting the ball out on time? Is he accurate? Is he hitting guys in the right spots? That is going to be a big part of this game, too. Now, if he's off a little bit early, then, there's going to take some getting used to this game. But if he can come out sharp, you can really go at this team and be willing to attack, and that's where they're going to have success. But if he is, unwilling to throw the ball, tucking it and running it all the time, that's going to be a little bit of a concern for me for this game. Not down the road. This is not one of those big picture problems. This is a Texas A&M thing. That's really where it was. And no, Mike Denbrock was not the OC in 2019. Mike Denbrock's last year at Notre Dame was 2016, just for the record, to respond to a question in the chat. So I want to see Riley being comfortable early on. That's going to be huge for Notre Dame if he can be comfortable running the show. Again, that doesn't mean completion percentage only. That means getting people lined up, getting the tempo the way it needs to be, getting the motions, everything timed up well, and then you're also making good decisions with the football. That's going to be key. And then the last thing for me, and this might be the most important thing for me outside of the offensive line playing well, because this is going to tell us a lot about this game, but this is going to tell us a lot about where this team is. And it's this right here. Are the receivers competing for the football? One of the things that drove me the most nuts last year was how poorly this receiving core fought for the ball. That's the one thing people talk about. Can't get off the line. They can't. That stuff was all overplayed. That was all overblown. They got open plenty of times and the ball never came. I know some people don't have it in their minds to fathom what that means or how that can be, but that's just the reality. I've shown tons of clips on it, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what I'm talking about. What they did a poor job of, however, and this is where I could understand Sam Hartman being a little bit gun-shy when guys were open, is unless they were wide open, they did not compete for the ball. And Chris Tyree is about the only guy that had any kind of really competitive catches last year outside of maybe Jaden Greathouse in the opener and against NC State. Very, very little fight for the ball. They got outplayed. I mean, you think of the Louisville game, right? I'm trying to remember. Let me pull that game up. But I think it was the third or fourth play of the game last season, and Notre Dame had actually already converted a first down. They were getting close to midfield. So they first play of the game, completion for 4 yards. Second play, completion for 10 yards. Third play, completion for 15 yards. Yeah, you're 1st and 10 in Louisville territory after 3 plays. And they throw a go ball to Rico Flores, who does not at all fight for the football, and it gets picked off. Like that can't happen. That tells me your mindset's not where it needs to be as a group. And that's where there aren't a whole lot of here we go again moments that I'll have, but that'll be one that'll trigger me. I'm just being honest with you. That'll trigger me. I want to see this receiving core fight for the football. And that was an issue for Notre Dame in 2017, if you'll remember. They didn't fight for the football grade. But you go out in that Michigan game in game 1, and they did the exact opposite. You got Miles Boykin out playing a guy for a deep ball. You got Alize Mack making a great catch, getting drilled, targeting. Guy gets kicked out of the game. Alize makes a great catch. Chris Fink outplays 2 guys for the football. They were battling for the football in 2018. And you knew this team was going to be a problem. You knew in the opener, yeah, there's some things that got to clean up, and they made this mistake, and BK's got to stop being BK and taking the foot off the gas when you have a lead, and Brian Polian special teams let them get all. But you knew this team, it's got some stuff to work out, but this team's going to be a problem. because their offensive line's playing well. Everybody's freaking out. Oh, they lost Mike McGlinchey. They lost Quentin Nelson. How are they going to play? Blah, 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 blah. And they came out in that first game and they took it to Michigan. And the receivers were setting the tone. They were blocking their butts off. They were competing for the football. They were running good routes. And you said, boy, if the receivers now playing well, this team's going to be a major problem. This team's going to be a major problem. And that's something that I want to see. It's going to tell me that Coach Brown has this group mentally ready to compete. And that's the big thing is, look, if Notre Dame barely wins this game by a field goal, but they compete their butts off, but they were sloppy, they had a couple turnovers, had some tackles for loss, Riley was a little off target, maybe throws a pick, give up a couple too many big plays. But at the end of the day, you win the game 24-20 and a little sloppy win. Don't care. Because as a football coach, I can clean all that stuff up. You are never primed to just play your best football in week one. Occasionally you'll have games like that, but it's usually against bad teams. If you remember Notre Dame against Texas in 2015, I don't know how much better that game could have gone. I think Malik was like 18 of 21. You ran the ball. Your starting running back gets hurt after 3 carries. Your next 2 guys come in. They run on them. Your defense. But that wasn't a very good Texas team. I think they went like 5-7 that year. They weren't a very good team. Right? Yeah, they played great against Rice in 2014. Rice wasn't very good. Right? There's going to be sloppiness, but you got to get the win. So I can live with sloppiness. I can live with the receivers dropping a couple balls. I just need to see him compete. I need to see the O-line play hard. I can live with mistakes. I can live with misses. I can live with, the timing in the zone plays wasn't always the best. I can live with that. I can fix that. As a coach, I can fix that. What I can't fix, because I either created the problem or I allowed the problem, is if my team doesn't compete. That's the problem. That's the biggest thing. And the receivers and the O-line are the 2 areas where that's going to matter most to me. So let's talk about the Notre Dame defense and what to look for from the Notre Dame defense. Number one, my biggest, there's 2 fears that I have about this game. And the biggest fear for me really comes down to the size of their offensive line. And Notre Dame's defensive line has played big offensive lines before. And this group of players have played against big offensive lines before. And so it's not that, oh, geez, I'm afraid of big offensive linemen, but you also have to be willing to look at it and say, yes, but just because you have played well in the past doesn't mean you're going to necessarily do the things you need to do in this game to have yourself ready to play. And that's where I kind of come down on it is this is a matchup that on paper, Notre Dame's defensive line should dominate A&M's offensive line. They should. They are not overly athletic. It's new. You're going to have 3 new starters in your offensive line, most likely. And as Ryan pointed out yesterday, you're going to have 4 guys in new places because Chase Basantis is going, I believe he played right tackle last year. He's going to be playing left guard this year. And so it's going to be a new look offensive line as well, but it's big. Across the board, there's 6'6", 320 from left to right, 6'6", 320, 6'6", 320, 6'3", 330. If that guy doesn't start, the or at that position is 6'4", 325, 6'5", 330, 6'7", 330. They're a big offensive line. And if your defensive line is not using their quickness, if they're catching, if they're not playing with good leverage, and this offensive line starts leaning on them, that's where I can get a little bit concerned about this game. So early on, I want to see that the Notre Dame defensive line is not allowing the bigger but less athletic offensive line to push them around. If A&M is able to come off the line and have some snaps earlier where they really push Notre Dame off the line, then that's a concern for me, and that could create some big plays in the run game. What that also does is it not only creates some holes, but it now makes the job of the linebackers even harder. And Notre Dame's got basically 3 new starters at linebacker. Jack Kaiser was a starter last year, but he's a starter at Rover. He's now playing Will. Drake Bowen's at Mike. Jalen Sneed's at Rover. All new. Kingston Villemas is going to play. He's a true freshman. Jaden Osbury's going to play. He's a redshirt freshman. You do not want to be in situations where these guys are being forced all game to come up and take on guards and block destruct and get off that way. You need these guys flying the football untouched. That is going to be a big part of this. And so early on, I need to see that the Notre Dame defensive line is not getting pushed around. That's a big thing for me. And then the second part of it is what ties into that is, okay, so if you're not getting pushed around, what does that mean? It means you're getting a lot of early penetration, a lot of early disruptions. You're getting upfield. You're getting into the backfield. You're forcing their running backs to make early cuts. I've said it a million times. You guys know this. If you're new to the channel, you're going to hear me say it a lot more times. One of the biggest ways to slow down the opposition run game is to force cuts as deep in the backfield as possible. When I was coaching running backs, the ultimate goal for me is we weren't making our cuts until we were at or past the line of scrimmage. We are standing on our outside zone track all the way till we get to the line, and then boom, we're cutting vertical, maybe a yard behind because it opened up, maybe at the yard, sometimes past the line of scrimmage. If you're running, power schemes or things, downhill schemes, like, hey, I want to be making that cut on inside zone near the line because you got to push, and I'm not having to cut. I'm just kind of working right back off your backside. So if you're not getting pushed around, well, then the counter to that means you're getting a lot of early penetration. You're getting a lot of early disruptions. And that's going to be a big key for me. And part of the reason is obviously you're holding up against their offensive line. But the other part of it is if you are getting a lot of early penetration, a lot of early disruptions, a lot of early pressures, it's going to get them out of rhythm. And it can be hard for a team playing their first game in an offense to get into rhythm if they start off out of rhythm, because they don't have that toolbox or the mental Rolodex of being in this offense for a long time to necessarily know what buttons to push. Your offensive coordinator doesn't know as much about this unit of players as he did his K-State group last year, where he kind of knew what buttons to push. He knew Will Howard. He knew DJ Giddens. He knew the tight ends. He knew what the offensive line was good at. So if they got into an early funk, he kind of knew, okay, this is what we go to kind of get rolling. That's not there in game one of a new staff. And so you want to get them out of rhythm early. If they don't get out of rhythm early and they get into rhythm, then the opposite is true. And so that's why it's very important that the defense get a lot of early penetrations and disruptions, and don't let A&M get into rhythm. And that's going to tell me that this defensive line is as good as we think it's going to be, that there's no steps back. And it's also, we're going to get a chance to see if these linebackers can make a lot of plays. That's one of the things we talked about. Is like, guys, there's going to be mistakes from the linebacking core that we didn't see last year. Just is. But that doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be worse. They got to make more plays, right? That's a big key. And if they're able to do that, then I think they'll make more plays. The second part of that, the third part is, to me, is ties into this, and that's that the linebackers are playing aggressive and being as disciplined as possible. One of the concerns I have about a group of linebackers, and I'm not necessarily as worried about this with Jack Kaiser, but again, we need to see him play this position more regularly. But with Drake Bowen, with Jalen Sneed, with Jaden Osborne, with Kingston William-Mossam, these are new roles for them. And yes, I love Drake's high school film, and we've seen him in practice and in some mop-up moments, and he had a big safety against Oregon State last year. And those things are all great. But now you're in a starter role. You're in a more prominent role. Are you playing aggressive, or are you struggling to get into the speed of the game? Right? And then what does Al Golden do to try to kind of fix that, right? Is he able to go out there and make some of the calls, some of the decisions, and to allow his group to really get rolling downhill? And do they play with some speed? I can live with some mistakes from the linebackers if they're playing 100 miles an hour. What I will not be good is if they're still making those mistakes, but then they're also giving up 4, 5, 6, 8-yard gash runs because they're not playing downhill. They're thinking too much. They're not playing fast. So that's going to be a big thing for me early that tells me the linebackers are locked in. They've got the reps. They're aware of what they're doing, and they're playing downhill. I can live with a bad run fit if you're doing everything hard, because again, I can correct the bad run fit, or the safety can make me right on a bad run fit. It's the worst thing for a safety trying to fit off of a linebacker is when a linebacker's catching 4 or 5 yards downfield. That's where you can kind of get into some trouble. And then the last one for me is I just want to see the secondary play sound football. The thing that when I look at this matchup, there's only two ways that A&M can really move the ball consistently and beat Notre Dame with their offense. Not turnover related, not short fields, not special, but just their offense goes out there and wins them the game. Is if they're ripping up big plays, and that's going to come because the D line's getting beat at the line of scrimmage, and they're giving up big plays in the secondary. You've got some new faces. Christian Gray's new. Jordan Clark's new. Rod Hurd's new. Don Schuler's not new to the team, but he didn't play any meaningful snaps last year outside the bowl game. So are they playing sound football? Look, if they're playing sound football, then the talent takes over. If they're not playing sound football, then that's when you let an inferior group make plays on you. And that's a concern. So, your body position isn't where it needs to be. So, you don't play a go ball the right way. And even if the guy doesn't catch it, you get called for pass interference because you're not playing sound football. You weren't where you needed to be. You're being too handsy. You're not trusting your technique. You're not trusting your footwork, your hand play, and all that. So you get real grabby on a slant route because you didn't play it right. Or you overplay something. A guy beats you for a slant route and he's catching and running. A guy outplays you for the football because you weren't in the right position. You went too high on a man covered outside go ball, and so he's able to back shoulder you with ease because you didn't play it right. You have a bad fit in the run game. You're supposed to fit here, you fit over there, or you don't fit at all. You're in space and you don't break down and come to balance. Guy cuts off you for a big gain. Those are things that if the secondary is playing sound, then they're going to be fine because they're better. But if they're not playing sound, Texas A&M is good enough to beat you if you don't play sound football. That's really what this boils down to is if Notre Dame plays their game, just play good, sound football, have some aggressiveness to you, you do you. They're going to win because they're the better team. If they don't and they make mistakes, they're not good, bad run fits, they're not disciplined on the back end, they're not being aggressive up front, their offensive line's catching again, their receivers aren't competing for the ball, they're not being aggressive, they're trying to win a 13-10 football game, that's how you get beat. And that's what Notre Dame is going to have to avoid if they're going to have a chance to win this football game. So before we get out of here, folks, I did have some super chats I wanted to get to. And Rob Osgood with one says, prove, thank you for the super chat, prove to the naysayers that Notre Dame belongs, to look for, don't just win, dominate, don't hold back, let the offense loose and enjoy it. There's a lot in there I agree with, but to me, I don't know that Notre Dame beating Texas A&M necessarily proves a lot of naysayers wrong because a lot of them will just simply say, well, A&M's not that good. They were overrated again. But I care more about the perception that Notre Dame fans have than I do about what ESPN's agenda-driven reporting and analysis thinks about Notre Dame. I really don't care. It's about what's our perception, the realistic perception that we have. What's the team's perception of itself? Those are things that matter a lot more to me. Michael Rogers with a super chat. Thank you very, very much, Michael. Michael predicts a 37-10 Notre Dame win. I love it very, very much. AST12321 with super chat. Thank you very much. If I told you on these two stats that Notre Dame gave up 4 sacks and 1 turnover with no other information, is that a win or a loss? How decisive would that be? If they gave up 4 sacks and had 1 turnover, that wouldn't be enough information for me. 1 turnover I can live with. 4 sacks, oh, okay. What were the sacks? Was it 3rd and 9, Riley running around and they sack him late? Was there an end of the half sack? Was there a, take a sack on 3rd and 7 at midfield because nobody's open and you just take the sack and because you were coached to, if nothing's there, you can't get open, get free, take a sack. All right, whatever. If there's a sack on 2nd and 5 and it's now 3rd and 10 and you convert to 3rd and 10, oh, okay, sack sucked. But there's just not nearly enough there's not nearly enough in that for me to know if it's a win or a loss. I'll say if they give up 4 sacks and have a turnover, it's most likely going to be a very competitive game. But whether it's a win or a loss, that I couldn't tell you. Now I'll say this: if you flip it, then I think that would be a very good sign for Notre Dame. If you flipped it and Notre Dame had 4 sacks and forced a turnover, I'd feel a little bit better. Just because I just think that this Notre Dame team with the kind of quarterback they have can overcome 4 sacks and a turnover in this type of game because I think their defense can dominate. And so that's why it's a little bit of a, you can call it hypocritical, but why the same stat being true for the other side would make me feel a lot better. Riza with a super chat. Thank you very, very much, Riza. Texas A&M is a mid-tier SEC team at best this year. We should win. The question is how we look doing it. If it's a nail-biter or we lose, it's an issue. If we win convincingly, it just means Notre Dame be what we think they have the potential to be this year. I'm going to disagree with part of that. I don't care if it's a nail-biter. Alabama had a nail-biter with Texas A&M last year and went to the college football playoff and gave Michigan the toughest game they had all year. So, in 2021, Alabama lost to Texas A&M at Texas A&M and went on to play for the national championship. Beat Georgia in the ACC title for the SEC title. So look, to me, it just no. I don't need them to win convincingly for it to not be a bad. I just need them to win, Riza. Any kind of win. Like Mart, you're not going to beat every team by 40, and especially in an opener. Would it be great if Notre Dame's convincing has a win? Sure. But for me, Riza, respect you, love you. I don't see it that way personally. I just care about winning. I do not care about all that other stuff. I really don't. I don't care about margin of victory. I don't care. I mean, it's great if it happens, right? Like, I'm not going to dismiss a convincing win. That would tell me something, as I said earlier in the show. But if they only win by a field goal, well, great. Go now. Go get it done, right? Keep winning, because that's all that matters. Just win. They'll clean up some of the stuff that comes out of this game, mistakes. O-line will get more experience. New guys in the secondary will be much more experienced as they get deeper in the season. Riley Leonard will be much more on the same page with his teammates. The coaches have a much better feel for what they're doing. We'll have answers and we'll have solutions to what Notre Dame is going to be doing. Looking at it from as a coaching staff, that's what I'm saying. Like, look, I just win. We can fix all that other stuff. That's how coaches look at it. Just get that early season win, and then we'll clean up the other stuff and get it fixed. I'm just telling you, that's how, at least that's how every coach I know is that way. And that opener against a good team, just get the W. That's all that matters. And then we'll fix all that other stuff, and then we'll have more convincing wins later. And just get that W. That's what matters to me. Appreciate the super chat, my man. D. Masak with a super chat. Thank you very much. If you're looking for your sign to sign up for the boards, here it is. Sign up. Start of the season is a perfect time to do it. Go Irish. I agree with you completely. Completely. Joe Papiti with a super chat. Thank you very much. Brian, I loved what Golden said in the presser. Basically, it was, if we play with fundamentals, we'll be fine. Irish win 31-20. Go Irish. He's absolutely right. When you're the better team, just don't beat yourself. Right? Just do your job and do it hard. That's it. I mean, when you have the better players, the only way you lose a game like that is if you don't do your job. You don't play well. You don't play sound. You have dumb penalties, dumb mistakes. You don't play with physicality. You let yourself get your butt kicked physically. I mean, Louisville was not a better team than Notre Dame was last year. They were a better team when they played, though, because Notre Dame had a lot of dumb mistakes, a lot of false starts. You're down, what was it, 17-10. I believe is when that play happened, or actually it was 7-7, and you throw your defense forces a fumble. You throw a slot fade, I believe is what it was, into the end zone. Bad ball, worst catch attempt by Chris Tyree of a not a very well thrown ball. You drop it, you're selling for a field goal. So instead of 14-7, tons of momentum, Louisville now views it as a win and a moral victory because they turned it over and forced you to a field goal. They take a 17-10 lead over Notre Dame. Sam Hartman throws a great ball down the field to Mitchell Evans for a 30-yard gain, comes back because hands to the face by your right tackle. That's just not doing your job. Like, all you had to do is use the technique that I've taught you to use every single day since I've been here, and every single offensive line coach. Harry Heastan taught you that. Jeff Quinn taught you that. Every single coach has taught you don't put your hand in someone's face. Right? That's just not doing your job. And then all of a sudden that 30-yard gain that gets you in scoring range gets called back. You don't score. Next thing you know, the route's on. Like, it's stuff like that. Just do your job. Just do your job. If you do that, you win. And winning is all that matters in this instance. So he is correct. That's a great observation by Coach Golden. Raymond Hart with a super chat. Go Irish. Thank you very, very much, Raymond. I appreciate you. And then Dim Whitland with the last super chat. A win is a win, and we appreciate you, Brian. Great show today. Go Irish. I thank you very much. I think that's a great way to end today's show. So that's going to do it for today's show. I'm going to go finish packing and get ready to head over to the airport. I'm going to be heading down there today for this game. I hope all of you all have a safe weekend. Enjoy the game. Enjoy all the games. There's some great games on tap this weekend. So I'll be certainly tuned into my TV tonight when I'm flying. I'll have my little computer screen up, pay for the internet so I can watch some games. And then, of course, have some fun watching the games tomorrow. So, again, make sure tonight we will publish we won't be live tonight, But Sean will publish the countdown to kickoff tonight. And then, of course, the post-game show tomorrow with Vince D'Addario, Ryan Roberts, Trevor Trowbridge, and Sean Davis will be joined for that. And then, of course, Monday, we'll be back Monday night. We'll do our Upon Further review on Monday night, not Sunday like normal because I'm traveling on Saturday. And we just weren't sure if, you never know with travel if I could get back in time to do it. So I may put something up Sunday night. Just depends on kind of how my travel gets back and how I'm feeling after breaking the film down on the flight and those type of things. So, but that's why you should always, not only like this show, but also subscribe to this show and turn your notification bells on. So when we do put videos out, you'll see it. So thanks for being with me today. Sign up for the message boards.irishbreakdown.com. If you want to become a big time supporter of us, you can join the Booster Club. If you do join the Booster Club, you get some cool IB merch that you get for free. So I appreciate you all doing that. So anyway, that's at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Have an awesome rest of your week. And we'll talk to you guys again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.